Welcome back to Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Who will be the country's next Chief Justice? Deputy Chief Justice? What sort of men and women should join the Supreme Court bench? These are questions critical to the next general election because, as we've been discussing on Cheche this morning, in the case of a dispute in the presidential election, the Supreme Court decides the outcome, as it did in 2013. Our guests this morning are both from the JSC, Professor Margaret Kobia, the Vice Chairperson, Acting Chairperson since the Chief Justice position is vacant, and Anna Madi, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. She's also the Secretary of the JSC. And we'll come to gender in a minute because, David, you were making some controversial claims about the quality of female judges in this country. But first, how much internal jostling is there within the judiciary for these positions? Because we understand that since last year when Dr. Mutunga first announced his plans to retire early, that there are people positioning themselves for these.
We actually read about those in the papers because nobody comes out.
So all these names we've been seeing
being bandied around, because I think for us, before we receive the applications, we can't even know who's running. We can't assume, and nobody really comes out to say I'm interested. So it's really a creation of, I don't know if it's a creation of the media or people who might be interested in a certain outcome and therefore begin to bandy around names, but without applications, really, we can't even begin to talk about. Okay,
so then, you know, tell us if the media also is creating this feeling that judges who were strongly positioned for these, for the Supreme Court, were transferred out of Nairobi as a result of that, you know, taken away from the limelight.
I know that transfers have been there, and they've been done in accordance with the transfer policy. And there's a particular judge that who, when she was moved to a particular station, and she had been requesting to leave that division for a very long time, and is the Chief Justice who had resisted moving her for a while, until eventually she said that division had become a bit heavy because of the nature of work. She needed something different. So it was actually, you'll be surprised that she requested. So it's not about any threat that was felt by anybody. In some situations, when a judge or a judicial officer requests, it's actually considered.
The perception was that she was transferred, I think, to Kisi.
No, Kericho.
Because of the rulings and judgment she was making.
No, it was on request. It was on request, and the request had been outstanding for over a year.
And in any case, that particular judge has not complained. Is other people. But let me just comment on what the media has been floating as names from inside who might be interested in this position. Of course, there have been names, and that purely depends with maybe sometimes some people feel X has been quite visible and they believe, so they can float the name. That's okay. We are also aware as JSC, people can be kind of motivated to float other people's name just to see the reaction. So in my view, that is not way to influence JSC, who actually we may appoint. But I think the biggest challenge is this position will attract very few qualified people because of the requirement. Therefore, if people have been floated and it look like there's just stringing within the judiciary, I think they should just reflect and apply as well.
There are some members of the JSC who are being said also to be interested. Have you heard of them, and what would you be advising them? To step out?
If a member of the JSC who is also qualifies for this position, actually will not bar them from applying. But immediately they apply before we get to the deadline, they will, good governance demands that they should actually step out. So right now we have not received any applications, but we are hoping by the time we get and close, any JSC member interested in that position, the right thing to do is to step aside and resign.
We have an acting Chief Justice.
Judge Ibrahim.
We don't have an acting Chief Justice. Yes. Let me just say very quickly. Let me quickly say that the operations of judiciary are intact because there is a structure under which every court serves. If you look at the High Court, it has a principal judge. the chief administrator of all cases are run in High Court. In case of Court of Appeal, we have a president of the Court of Appeal. He runs with his judges and he makes sure everybody has got enough workloads. Then now, when Chief Justice was going to go away, they consulted among themselves and they appointed one of the senior most judge to be the president of Supreme Court. It is Ibrahim. Therefore, with that structure, and then there's JSC, there's no vacuum as per se.
But they're not properly constituted. Then they have no quorum. So the Supreme Court
is not in operation now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any quorum until we get these 3.
Which you're hoping to do by October.
If you get the CJ quickly, at least there will be 5. But right now, I think they cannot determine any matter.
So if the Supreme Court is not operational, what is the point of having a presiding person?
I think there are matters that may be referred to Supreme Court, so at least administratively they need to be scheduled. Therefore, there is need to have a leader. I mean, in any structure, there need to be a team leader who can make some decision, who can attend some meetings. That's important.
But decisions cannot be made. So even if you're scheduling things, to what end?
That is now the agency we understand as JSC.
I think there are some matters which may be hard because they don't need a full bench and disposed of. If I'm not wrong, Mr.
Yes, there are applications that can be done by a single judge or two judges under the
but which brings me to the question. There are matters which were pending before the Supreme Court which hadn't been ruled upon. What is going to happen to those? And I have in mind one matter from the last election, I think, of Chris Bishage, which is still pending. What is the fate of that matter?
What happens is that if the judges sitting in that matter who have since left, within the law they can still submit their rulings even after their exit. So their rulings will still be delivered.
But isn't it also now that brings the point of the efficiency of dispatch of the business of the Supreme Court? That matter was always pending. This Supreme Court went into all these issues of departures and retirement. Why didn't they expedite and clear all the business that required a full bench such that justice is done to the applicant?
I hear you. It's very difficult to know what was going on within the bench. But what I can say is that really whoever comes in next should be able to expedite and deliver those rulings. Because I know that there are also time limits within which some of this required to be done within the law. And therefore the next team should just be able to do the right thing.
I'm not underestimating, but you know, the Supreme Court actually, besides hearing the election petitions, there are matters as not as much as Court of Appeal and High Court. But that doesn't mean we should move fast to have it function.
Okay, very quickly, because we're running out of time and there's some questions specific to you. We've talked about the competencies, you've talked about the traits you're looking for, we've talked about political and ethnic considerations, which is still upsetting some of our viewers, but then there's gender. And you talked about, you know, the fact that, you know, at least with the deputy and the chief justice, you'd like one from either gender. David, you were making the point during the break that you didn't see any qualified female.
That's not true.
What were you saying?
You want to expose me to the fire of the female gender in this country.
What were you
I just said that looking around and the names which have been popped up in the media and public speculation for Chief Justice, I have not seen the name of a female judge, first of all, if I'm not wrong. I've not seen as a top, as a favorite to take that position. But also generally...
But doesn't that have to do with his history though? And the precedent that's been set, that you have a male Chief Justice and then a female Deputy Chief Justice?
Yes, true, but also the number of judges, female judges who have come onto the bench, you know, this has increased more recently. So if you're looking at experience and tenure and that profile, you know, there are few. I don't want to, I'm avoiding naming names because it will be prejudicial. But in general, I think the JSC would have to work very hard to get you know, the sufficient number of applicants, female applicants for CJ. Even if it means, are you doing any affirmative action, encouragement behind the scenes, you know, come up? Because
sure, I think I would agree with you. When it comes to application for high-level jobs for women, it doesn't come that easily. However,
can you blame them when it comes to the judiciary, given the past history?
being the history that we have always had men, that is already a problem. But moving forward, I don't think in this country right now we don't have a few women actually who can qualify for becoming a Chief Justice. So in my view, I would encourage them to apply, so that now they can go to the next level. Because how else do you get the Chief Justice job unless you apply for it?
But Professor Kobe, wouldn't you agree, though, that the women who have been in top positions at the Chief Justice, whether you're looking at Nancy Baraza, Kalpana Rawal, or even you know, your predecessor, Gladys Sholay, that they've all, you know, just feel that they have been treated, that they've been subject to scrutiny that their male counterparts have not attracted?
For me, of course, being a woman, I would agree. When women are at senior positions, they get more scrutiny than men. And in a small little mistake they make, they might even be punished under.
Yes.
So I think that one is true. But that does not mean they do not have the confidence to come and apply for this position if they meet the qualification. For sure, once you have met the qualification, the Constitution also demands we must have gender representation in these positions we are in. And that's why I said if the CJ is a man, most likely, if not most likely, then this CJ will be a woman. And at least, yeah, and for Supreme Court, actually I would want to encourage more women to come for the position that is there now, which has been advertised. There's nothing wrong getting the Chief Justice and DCJ a woman and the Supreme Court judge a woman.
Yeah. There is a petition to kick, I mean, actually, that we don't need the Supreme Court. It's pending before you, isn't it? What is the progress with it? And shouldn't we consider it seriously, seeing as the Supreme Court has just become an arena for drama?
Actually, the petition is directed at specific judges. It's not about doing away with the Supreme Court.
Yes.
It's about particular judges. It makes very specific allegations, and therefore it has to go through the usual process, so that if the Commission is satisfied that there is sufficient ground, then they would recommend a tribunal. If there's no sufficient ground, it ends there.
It's dismissed.
So this means the drama is not over yet, because you could be recruiting new judges, then others could be on the chopping board, subject to tribunals to go out again, and somebody mischievous can prolong this drama.
But at the same time, when these petitions come, they come with some allegations. Therefore, the fact that you get Chief Justice will not stop judges. Not only in the Supreme Court, all the judges always get some petition from time to time. And the only thing we do, we hear, we do process, and then we recommend. Most of them are dismissed. I can tell you on average, we get almost every month around 3, 4, where when people lose cases in court, they arrange some things. So this is something that we always do. Therefore, we are prepared as JSC that petitions will always be there for removal, because that is one of the functions of JSC, but at the same time we also want to make sure they do the right job in terms of their conduct.
Our time is up, but there are some questions for you in particular, Ms. Amadi. Why has the judiciary not made public the names of successful candidates for clerical jobs that it advertised last year? Letters are being issued in secrecy at the Mayfair office. Please publish the names of the successful candidates in the newspapers and deal with the bandits at Mayfair. Office corruption is still rife under your watch. That came from Andrew. And there was someone earlier who said, is this thing being manipulated by cartels?
I know that the shortlist was put out. I also know we had difficulties with our the downtime with our website, because normally that's where it goes. So there shouldn't be a problem with putting the names out. But I know that those who were successful, some of them have already received their letters, others haven't. And of course, we're making sure that everybody gets a text message to tell them whether they were successful or not. And if there are any complaints, we shall surely deal with them. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're winding up now, and panelists, I'll come to you. We'll take you you gave us a very pragmatic response about how the political class should deal with the recruitment of this new bench. But as we wind up, as we go forward, we're hoping to have this new bench in place by October, at least. We asked our viewers what competencies the JSC should be looking for. We've heard from Professor Kobia and Ms. Amadi. What do you think, going forward, given the intrigues we've seen not just at the Supreme Court, but the wider judiciary? What should we be looking for in the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, and the new judge that joins the bench?
Well, as she said, we have qualities that are advertised. But to me, you'll get a judge who, the Chief Justice, who would be like Mumbingugi. Very independent.
Our views agree with you.
Very independent. And who does not take any nonsense from anybody. That's the kind of Chief Justice I would like. And also very tough. One of the criticisms about Mutunga is that he didn't have any control. Things went haywire. That's why you say...
He's a poor administrator, was one of the criticisms.
Yeah, he was very poor administrator. We want a tough guy who is also very independent.
Oh, lady.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yes, I mean, we need a Chief Justice who's going to restore confidence in the Supreme Court. If you ask me, my rating of it is very low because of the squabbles which have gone on there, as well as just the way it has handled its business. It has not stuck out as the leading light that we expected from the judiciary over the year, after all these years. But some attributes of William Mutunga that we need to carry over on. The sociable, outgoing Chief Justice, not a reticent Chief Justice like of before, who are nowhere in the public arena, hiding behind gowns and locked up in the buildings there. We want a Chief Justice who can lead the country and socialize people with the rule of law and be its champion, but also very defiant against encroachment by the executive.
Okay, so you have a bit more to add to your interview process. Your final thoughts as we leave. You will be overseeing this process. You wait for the applications, and so hopefully they'll start coming in now that people know they haven't been coming in, and you open them on the same day. Take us through the process. What should we expect?
Once we open them, we will take all the data in one matrix. We will present it before the JAC, just so that they know who has applied. We'll take the JAC to a retreat to go through each one of them. Remember, they're all required to attach copies of some of the scholarly articles they've done. There will be somebody to study that, just to see their writing skills. We will have, I hope that the public will participate and tell us what they think about the candidates, either good or bad. So all that will be put together, and we'll have to go to some retreat and comb through all that before the shortlist is done.
And once the shortlist goes out?
Once the shortlist goes out, then of course it goes with the interview dates, so that people know when to come.
So then the JSC will interview them. Do they go before Parliament before you submit the names to the President?
The names go to the President first, and then the President submits the name to Parliament. So Parliament will either accept or reject, and that only goes for the DCJ and CJ. So the Supreme Court judge doesn't need to go through the parliamentary process. So once Parliament accepts, then we take them through the swearing in, and then we have an ECJ.
Thank you very much. Professor Kobe, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that we are looking for a CJ, besides all the other competencies who can work with the three arms of government. Still exercise his independence, but still understand we are one country and be able to work with the other two arms of government to move this country forward.
Thank you very much.
And we want to assure Kenyans that we will get the right person for them, and there's no kind of vacuum right now. The courts are moving, and the judiciary is on course, and JSC is ready.
Okay, our time is up then. I'll thank our guests for their time on Cheche this morning. Our guests are both from the Judicial Service Commission, the Vice Chairperson, Professor Margaret Kobia, and Anna Madi, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary and the Secretary to the JSC. Our thanks also to our panelists, Mutegin Jao and David Makali. My name is Udra Kamimo. Thank you for watching and engaging with us here on Cheche. We'll see you next week.